Welcome everyone, my name is Fist Truck. I originally had a much more elaborate, well thought out and planned intro for this video. However, I am currently experiencing a pretty severe bout of food poisoning. So, it's either I make a long, well thought out and elaborate intro, or I don't shit my pants. And I'm sorry, but I only have so many boxers that I can shit in. So without further ado, this is how you take an Elden Ring with the Paladin build. The cure to my mud butt would be if you were to hit that subscribe button. Also check out my second channel, Fist Truck TV, and my Twitter, Fist Truck, @FistTruck. Okay. That's it. I'm going to be breaking up this guide into 3 parts, what I'm defining as early game, mid game, and late game. Early game is level 30, mid game is level 70, and late/endgame is 125. Also, purely out of curiosity and as a callback to my How to Halberd and Elden Ring video, the point of this build is to be just under the threshold of being over encumbered, so I spend pretty much the whole game at about a 99% equip load. No, you don't have to do that to tank in this game, but I feel like if I could just dodge roll through everything, that kind of defeats the purpose of it. Since I'm going for a tank build, I am trying to embrace the typical RPG/MMORPG usage of the word. You know, high survivability, mid damage, or at least it's how it should be, unless the game is balanced like shit. Also, lastly, I feel like this goes without saying, but I say it anyway. If I didn't do it in the build, I didn't, and I won't, but you can. And without further ado, let us get into the early game portion of this build. Step 1, make a character. For what is now the 3rd or 4th video in a row, we're going to be picking the hero class because it has all the strength and no dex, because dex rhymes with sex, and we're not having any of that around here. For our starting gift, I had no idea what to pick, so I just decided to choose Shabui's Whoa, really just for when I do co-op. Lastly, I named my character Jesus Crust because this is supposed to be a paladin, and I happen to have been watching a video about Pizza Hut while recording this. Step 2, you know this one's gonna be a great build because we're about to start off by going to the literal fucking pits of New Jersey. For some odd reason, there's this one merchant that's located over here who must have signed a peace treaty with this rot dragon, this one knight's cavalry, and this one deathbird because he's in between all of them, yet somehow continues to live in peace. Nonetheless, we're gonna be buying the Great Helm off of him for 1800 Eldens. I made sure to make this the first equipment step because I don't give a fuck what anyone says. You cannot Crusader without having this stupid ass helmet on. Step 3, and this one probably should have been step 2, but past me wrote it in this order, so that guy must have been onto something. We need to make a lot of Eldens fast. Normally I try and refrain from being cheesy when doing these things, but I'm an adult and I don't have all the time in the world, so fuck it, we're being cheesy. Take this teleporter behind this one church over here. It takes you over to Dragon Barrow where everything is incredibly valuable. Get this one knight's cavalry to Kermit Suicide. And then there's this spot with a bunch of open graves. You can pick up some of the little consumables over here. If you're the kind of person that wants to spend all the time in the world killing that one big dragon, go for it. I'm not doing that shit. And for what we need, that knight's cavalry was more than enough. Step 4, time to get our forever weapon, the Great Mace. Because nothing says paladin like crushing all the bones of those who are non-believers, aka every other religion except your own. You pretty much have to go all the way to the Grand Lift of Dictus. Near there is an outpost with some dudes. There's a treasure chest. It's inside there. You're gonna want to be very careful because if you're like me at this point, I'm pretty sure all these guys will absolutely rock your shit. Now, fortunately for us, we only need 21 strength to wield this with 2 hands. Now, unfortunately for us, we're not gonna be doing that, so you're gonna need 28 strength for this one. Step 5, we're gonna get the green turtle talisman because very soon we're about to be fat as a motherfucker. Now, unfortunately, the moment you go over a 70% equip load, your stamina regen gets gimped. So to remedy that, we're going to be going to Summon Water Village. You know you're in the right spot when you're by these turtles. The turtles that fuck, because turtles fuck! Step 6, we're going to be getting the Golden Vow Ash of War because it's very paladin-y, and it's also very good. For some odd reason, for something so good, just some random dude on a horse has it in Limgrave, and I'm surprised that it's kind of just chilling here. The moment you get this, you're going to want to slap it on the Great Mace. Now, it's up to you what infusion you want to go for. I did go with Sacred, and in the long run, that's not the better choice, but I think for early game, it's the right call. Step 7, we may or may not currently be naked, roaming the countryside looking like a medieval version of the world-renowned guitarist, Buckethead. So what armor set that we can get now would fit this look the best? Well, in my opinion, and currently taking the path of least resistance, it's the chainmail armor, which conveniently, the first merchant we're likely to see in the game sells. You'll be needing about 3,500 Eldens for this one. Step 8, time to take a visit to our local shopping center, our only shopping center, our favorite shopping center. the Stormvale Shopping Center, which means you have to kill Margaret and then get the Curved Sword Talisman, because once again, what would a fish truck video be without stopping by this place? Speaking of which, step 9, we're going to be getting the Iron Wet Blade. Why? Because we're going to be giving our Great Mace the Heavy Infusion. Not now, but later. Step 10, on the subject of continuing our tour through this mall, we'll be getting the Manor Tower Shield, which you can find by going up this one path, doing some jumping, and then getting to the room full of homeless men. Do take care, as they will try throwing shit at you while you try picking up this shield. And why this shield? Well, because the more and more I play this game, the more I'm coming to think that this is the best option for an early game Great Shield. Has 100% block, really high guard boost. The only catch is that it's heavy as shit and requires a lot of strength to use. But that's why we had to be cheesy earlier when it came to making Eldens. Now time to talk about stats, because I'm very sure that the moment you picked up that Manor Tower Shield, if you were going through the game the same way that I was, either over encumbered or very close to doing that. So starting with Endurance, 19 will give us enough equip load that our legs don't just crumble like pretzel sticks. Our strength is 30 because we need a shit ton of it in order to wield this shield. And lastly, our vigor will be 16 because there are 2 levels left over to be level 30, and for the love of God, we need health. Nothing says being a tank like having a giant mace, giant shield, chainmail armor, and then getting 2-shotted because you don't have any health. Now with the early game stuff out of the way, it's time to move on to the mid game. Hair is now growing in places we once thought impossible. And our health bar will hopefully no longer look like a chopped up Twizzler by the end of this section. Step 1, it's about time we look the part of a Paladin, even though we still won't be able to cash it by the end of this section. Nonetheless, we're getting the Lane Dell armor because it's yellow, like the stereotypical color for holy shit in video games. Unfortunately, this does mean that we have to farm this armor off of the Lane Dell Knights. Whichever one you find easiest to bully that one. I chose this one in the Altus Plateau that's at the bottom of the giant staircase. However, you could also go with the one that's by the Artist Shack over in Liurnia. Fun fact, I must have killed this guy what seemed like, I don't know, 20-30 times, and he never dropped the gauntlets once. But I definitely got the helmet 5 times, and we're not changing the fucking helmet out because in order to Paladin, you need to have this bucket helmet on. It is the most essential part of this build. Step 2. Speaking of shit that one degen wouldn't drop, he would have dropped the golden great shield, which is the shield we'll be getting, by the way, because it's golden. Like Paladin, like holy. Anywho, if you're trying to get this shield, none of the dudes that use a bow will drop it. I unfortunately learned that after I had gotten the shield and tried to get it off the guy with the bow. Thank you, Wiki. This shield does require 34 strength to use, has a bit more guard boost than the Manor Tower shield, and it will be our forever shield for this build. Step 3. I should have probably did this one in a different order, but whatever. We'll be getting the Great Shield Talisman. This one's real easy peasy. There's this one carriage over here that's by a bunch of ballista that will try and gun you down, but miss every time, it seems. This gives us more guard boost, and this talisman will be sticking with us for the rest of the game. Step 4. We'll be buying the Finger Seal, which you can buy off the 2 dead Amazon employees within the round table hold. We're not really using it yet, but we will in the next section. I just kind of wanted to put this here. I don't know, I guess it's like stuffing my underwear just so this section's a little bit bigger. Step 5, we'll be getting Radahn's Great Rune, which means you have to fight Radahn. So with this, I'm just going to briefly be talking about how you play this build. However, I'm going to get more in depth with it later in the video. Radahn's a good example of how you kind of have to adapt your play style to this build, especially if you've been playing through this game with having regular dodges the whole time. So some bosses and enemies like to be cheesy, which means that sometimes the hitbox for an attack is behind you because they're really, really big, and if you're really close to them, then technically the blade of the weapon is behind your shield. This wouldn't be a problem if we dodge, but with the shield, different story, and with our dodge, the fat roll dodge is slow as shit. So it's either the hitbox is behind you, or it's some moves just ignore the shield, and I can't tell the difference. Nonetheless, for Radahn, I found the attack that would always ignore my shield was his overhead attack. So anywho, when you see him bringing down the 2 swords like that, either back the fuck up so you can block them, or more realistically, just use your fat roll and dodge it. Also, you have to kind of be aware of what moves will knock you on your ass, because what this game likes to do, if you're using a shield, is knock you on your ass and then immediately follow up with something that will smack the shit out of you. So if you know there's a move coming up that's about to knock you on your ass, you gotta fat roll dodge it. Also, if a boss's combo ends with a move that will knock you on your ass, I also highly recommend that you dodge that one as well, because what usually happens is that you get pushed back, and what would normally be a chance for you to attack is winds up getting wasted on you just recovering. Anywho, now with Radahn and the dreaded Leonard being dead, it's time that we climb this dumbass tower. Unfortunately, it requires some really janky platforming. Climb to the top and get his Great Rune. The reason why I just talked about getting this Great Rune is because by the end of this, we're not really going to be having all that many points in mind, which will be important. So this will beef up all of our bars. I don't think there's anything bad about having more health, more stamina, and more blue. I keep forgetting the name of it. One last addition to this. This is not a necessary step. I kind of hate using Great Runes because it's like being human in Dark Souls, where when you die, I feel like the punishment is just a little too severe considering how hard these are to get. But it does help a lot, and for long stretches of the game where you might confidently stay alive, this will help a great deal. So on to stats for the mid-game section. Just as a warning, I might have fucked up with the endurance. I don't think so, but if I did, just once again adjust accordingly. Nonetheless, vigor will be 40. We finally have a health bar. Mind will be at 20. This is more for the future. Endurance will be at 20. Just one more point because we're preparing for the future. And then our strength is going to be at 34, which will accommodate for the shield. Now we're finally hitting the home stretch, aka what will be endgame, aka the other half of the game. Because when I went from early game to mid game, I went from level 30 to level 70. And now going from mid game to end game, I'm going from level 70 to level 125, aka almost twice as much as the previous section. Oh well, it do be like that sometimes. Let's get the shit started. Step 1, time to find and look the part of a Paladin, or a Paladin if you will. We'll be getting the Tree Sentinel armor from the Oriza hero's grave within the Altus Plateau. This armor's golden, it's glorious, and requires us to commit some auto insurance fraud by getting these horse carriage things to crash into each other. Once again, let me reiterate, we are not changing the fucking helmet. The bucket stays on forever. As one commenter said in this video I put up of me fighting Millennia, the drip is immaculate and it will stay that way. Step 2, we'll be getting the Holy Ground Ash of War for our shield. This can be found with the Oriza hero's grave. In order to get this, you must commit auto insurance fraud by getting these horse carriage things to crash into each other. I realized after the fact that this step makes me look really lazy. Oh well. To be honest, getting this Ash of War isn't all that important, but since we're getting the armor, we kind of have it anyway, and it's better than nothing. Also, it's very Paladin-esque since you hold up the shield and it creates a little circle of healing and defense and stuff. Really cool when you're in co-op. Step 3, we'll be getting the Great Heal because our faith is finally going up, which means that we finally believe. This is sold by Brother Dumbass after he has reached the Altus Plateau to speak with that one guy who has the mask and the finger. This costs 9,000 Aldens. Step 4, we'll be getting the Golden Vow incantation. I know this might seem redundant for everyone, but just bear with me. As you found within the corpse stench shack within the lower parts of Mount Gelmir. Watch out for the dogs of the crazy cat lady when doing this. Anywho, we're getting the incantation because we're about to replace the Ash of War. Step 5, time to get a new Ash of War. We'll be getting Prayerful Strike. And oh my fucking Christ, this shit is so annoying to get. This one fucking Beetleborg is running Rainbow Road. We'll have to do trigonometry just to find out where our parabolas meet. It's running laps really close to the sealed tunnel within the Altus Plateau. Also, why this Ash of War? Well, I slept on this for a really long time, and for those who have seen my How to Mimic Tier in Elden Ring video, this build is gonna look really familiar. Nonetheless, back then, I just had it on for shits and giggles and I never used it. However, in here, I didn't realize that this Ash of War heals the shit out of you and hits like a fucking dump truck. I mean, I don't want to say it's as good as drinking a flask, but it almost is. Step 6, we'll be getting the Order's Blade incantation, which you could purchase off of D. It's nuts. It costs 3,000 currency. Now, unfortunately, in order to get Holy on our weapon, it requires that we invest in Int, which really pisses me off, because I really wanted to keep my guy brain dead stupid for this playthrough, but oh well, he's slightly less stupid now. Step 7, this one's really fucking useless, but Paladin. We'll be getting the Wrath of Gold incantation, aka Wrath of the Gods, from the Woodfolk ruins in the Altus Plateau. It's spooky. Try not to die. It does a lot of damage. It takes forever to cast, and to be honest, it's a far cry from the glorious days of Wrath of the Gods where you can be the biggest cornball in the world and spam this thing. It's really good against groups. There's that. I can see the value of it there. However, playing on your own, pretty trash. Step 8, we'll be getting the Old Lord's Talisman. It's in Fair Missoula, pretty much right at the end, right before you fight Malekith. You gotta pop a Yui before you get to the Huntsman on the bridge. If you decide to screw over the snake-worshipping dipshits over in the Volcano Manor, you'll get invaded by Bernal. However, if you never talk to him, he never invades you because out of sight, out of mind, I guess. Nonetheless, this Talisman gives us a nice fat boost to the duration of our buffs, which would be Order's Blade and Golden Vow. It does make a pretty significant difference. Step 9, and probably the last important step, we'll be getting the Dragon Golden Crest Great Shield Talisman because this one little thing gives us almost as much defense as our armor does. For once, I finally have footage of me getting this stupid thing. This can be found within the Haley tree. You have to go on these branches, drop through the roof, and then fuck up the drop like I did, and then do it again, and then almost get gunned down by all these centipede men. Let me just clarify once again, because I have to say every time I walk through this place, this whole area sucks balls. And now with that out of the way, I'm gonna hold off on step 10 just for a bit and talk about stats. So thankfully, this is the end of our journey. Our stats are kind of all over the place, and that's why I really wanted to break it down into 3 sections. So first, we started with our vigor, which will be 50. Our Twizzler got bigger. Our mind is still staying at 20 because we're not really casting all that much unless it's a boss fight. Our endurance will be at 29 because that's the exact amount that you need to not be over encumbered with all this shit on. Our strength is going to be at a nice round 40 to make sure that we get the most out of our heavy infusion. Our faith is going to be at 32 because 32 is what you need to cast the Wrath of Gold, that thing that I never cast. And our int is going to be at 13 because that's the bare minimum that we need in order to cast Order's Blade. So thankfully, when you cast Order's Blade, it only goes off the incant scaling of the seal that you're using, which in our case is only based off of our faith stat. Now it's time to talk about how to play this build. And really, the only thing that's worth mentioning is how you're actually going to tank things, which really means whether or not you should dodge something or block something. Unfortunately, I couldn't word this one properly because I'm fucking dumb and also on the verge of shitting my pants. So I made a questionably helpful flowchart to help explain this for me. Does the attack knock back? If no, block. If yes, does that knockback lead to damage? In other words, will you get knocked back and then get smacked by a follow-up attack? Or does the attack have some sort of magical element to it so you're going to be taking chip damage through the block? If the answer is no, dodge that shit. If the answer is yes, is the dodge too slow to either avoid the damage altogether or to avoid the follow-up attack? This really isn't a problem for any boss except for fucking Millennia, because that boss is balanced like garbage. That's a topic for a different video that I swear is gonna come eventually. If the answer is no, then dodge it. If the answer is yes, will the damage kill you? If the answer is no to that, then just eat the damage, block it, and live on. If the answer is yes to that question, then eat shit and die. I can't help you. Aside from that, all our cast stuff are really just going to be used for boss fights. I did use Order's Blade every now and then when I was walking around, but aside from that, I never touched the stuff. So if anyone has any questions regarding fighting Millennia with this build, first, I have a full unedited video of me fighting her with this specific build in the description. Second, don't. To be honest, if you're doing the same way that I did, this shit just isn't fun. Not worth it. By the time I beat her, I didn't feel like a winner. Third, if you really insist on doing it, you're going to be dodging most of her stuff instead of blocking because she heals through 100% blocks because...
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm just going to leave it at that because, like I said, this is probably something for a different video. Now, how would you run this build if you happen to be playing this into later New Game Plus cycles? Well, you could go the route of hyper-optimizing it and using things like Black Flame Protection, getting heavy armor, using consumables, and the whole 9 yards. Or, and hear me out, you could just go below a 70% equip load and hit the B button. I know that sounds dickish, but having played this game up to New Game Plus 9 or 10 or something, I do feel this game isn't balanced all that properly for tank builds. Or on a fresh playthrough, I think it's pretty solid and really, really fun. Once you start getting really late into it, the amount of damage you take from anything is ridiculous. And considering that you'd have to put in so much work just to make it semi-viable, I honestly just don't find that fun, and if I'm not having fun, why am I playing this? And lastly, we end with step 10. Time to finally fulfill our duties as a paladin, and in the name of Obesus Creasy himself, we must... Alright, and we finally made it to the end of the video. I hope I made being a tank somewhat approachable for the majority of people, minus the fat rolling bit, but you really don't have to do that. If you made it to the end of this video, how about this time we say muffin? Put muffin in the comments. I'm sorry this one took so long, in between me playing through the whole game to do it, and then recently catching food poisoning. This has been quite the ordeal, and I'm happy to finally have this shit done with. Anywho, I've been Fiststruck. If you like, comment, subscribe. If you don't, do the opposite of everything. And until next time, don't forget to always wipe before you shit.